Hi everyone, welcome to FilmDirt. Let's talk about Wonderland. It came out in 2003 and I've only just now got the chance to see it. It's one of those films that has evaded me all this time. Stars Val Kilmer and Kate Bosworth and many other character actors we've seen in loads of other stuff. This story covers the Wonderland murders that took place in 1981. You don't really need to be fully familiar with it. I wasn't. It was just something I heard about. I didn't really do much digging before I came into this movie. I thought I'd just let the movie play out and take what I could from that. So I enjoyed it. So you don't really need to be familiar with the actual event. You can just go into the movie cold like I did and get a fair bit out of it. So Val Kilmer plays the legendary John Holmes, who was a porn star back in the 70s and 80s, and who notoriously had a huge tool to work with, as it were. Back when I was in school, I would hear legends like John Holmes and Ron Jeremy and those types, and how they really are legends for having sex with thousands and thousands of women. But back then, no one really cared to mention that all those women were paid actresses. So there's a reason that they bedded so many. So this story gives us the overview that John Holmes back then was involved in the Wonderland gang, who were drug runners for Eddie Nash, who was a nightclub owner. Quite a complicated story, and it's not completely explained clearly in the film. And then I later found out after I finished watching, I'm sure you have as well, where the case wasn't completely resolved by the police or in court either. Most of the parties were acquitted, including John Holmes himself, even though there is a very high probability, and it's mentioned in the film as well, that he was directly involved in the murder of at least someone at the party. So when you finish this film, like many true crime stories like this, I do a little bit of digging afterwards just to read up on, what I found of interest in this story. And I'm glad that what I got from the film was exactly what I got from reading up on the actual case itself, where, as I said, it wasn't completely resolved. And the film does make that clear as well, because it's feeding you little points of the murders and various takes from various characters here. And then towards the end of the film, it just gives you the whole story as it was depicted. I mean, no one here, in this way of life is ever going to just spill their guts or take covert footage of exactly what happened. So it is messy. It's messy in the film, and I just found it a lot of fun, really. Not the best film I've ever seen, certainly not, but an interesting couple of hours for sure. I've always really admired Val Kilmer as an actor. He's always good in everything he does. He took on quirky roles, didn't he? They're all dark characters, and they're very varied. He played Elvis in True Romance, and that superb performance in Tombstone. Of course, he played Batman as well. Now, if anything, Batman is probably the lightest character he played in that particular film, although, with recent news that the Schumacher cut hopefully is going to be released by Warner Brothers, in my opinion, he's the ideal actor for Bruce Wayne. It seemed like ideal casting for me. Kate Bosworth plays Dawn Schiller. I believe she's underage and plays that role superbly. Lisa Kudrow plays Sharon, who's John Holmes' wife. And this was the part that I did read before going into the movie, in that Sharon and Dawn, they got on as friends, and they have done since John Holmes' passing in the early 80s. So, it's just really an odd story, isn't it? And as mentioned at the end of the movie, John Holmes did die eventually of AIDS, and he had a very troubled life, completely dependent on drugs, especially later on in life, and being involved in the porn industry as well. And there's all sorts of stories about him being so dependent on drugs that he couldn't even do a full day's work on the porn film set, and he had to keep being lured back into the bedroom in front of the cameras because he would always be off somewhere, doing lines. So ravaged with drugs in his system that he couldn't even achieve an erection while on set, which you'd think would be absolutely crucial to the job description. Surprising that he got as much work as he did, although it does mention online that his work offers were decreasing. No surprise there. So this film does have a style to it. Lots of quick cuts and quick edits. Lots of bloom effects on camera, which just makes everything look sunny, and it's quite a nice look. I quite like it. And when they're showing the accounts going back in time, like when they're giving police interviews, there is a filter over the lens, and it's sometimes quite grainy, which is a good effect and not too distracting. If you imagine films from Tony Scott where they're just quick cuts, quick edits, they get to the point nice and quickly, it's all very interesting to look at. And this film is very akin to that type of editing. So during the police scenes, it does jump backwards and forwards as it's taken into account the version of events for more than one character, which is fine. It is a complicated story, so you can just go with it. And it's all quite interesting. It's not really about porn at all. That's what I believed it might be. It's marketed as a Val Kilmer plays John Holmes film, so you assume there might be more than a few mentions of the porn industry in it, but there isn't really. There's a few mentions of it, of course, but it really is just about the gangland murders that just happens to have a major porn star in the thick of it. So how about giving this a score? I'll give it 3 stars, just because I did find it interesting. It's a worthy couple of hours of viewing. And again, it's one of those films where it makes you do a little Google at the end just to read up on the actual events. So with that, thanks for joining me for this little chat, and I'll see you again for another film chat soon. It was great speaking to you. All the best, and take care.